Hello and welcome to the LARP News podcast. This is going to be a very interesting one because I'm joined by Ian, who you know.
Hello.
And our friend the narrator, who is Bungle.
Hello.
And we're going to talk about our own nation.
Our own nation.
Navarr.
Navarr.
We are not going to have any guests on.
No.
We are going to nail every aspect of what it is to be a Navarr. Yeah. We're not going to mess up any of the lore at all. And we're going to leave just knowledge bombs that will leave people excited to join
Staggered.
Yeah.
Slack-jawed.
Just because the title of the podcast is The LARP Noobs and we've only been doing this a couple of years, and in those couple of years we've made pretty much every mistake people can make.
Yeah.
I would like to highlight that we only learn and grow from our mistakes.
Yeah, I feel like there you're referring to your tricorn hat.
But the tricorn hat is one of them. Yeah, that's a good example. Yeah, not so limited to just a tricorn hat. There are many examples.
Stuff from Wish and all kinds of weird things.
We've hit every rough edge that there is there to hit. So, let's talk a little bit about Navarr, shall we?
Well, I think one of the first things to really say, and we were talking about this going into doing the episode, is the fact that this whole podcast, in many ways, has a low-key undertone of selling how awesome Navarr is to people.
No, it's not low-key. It's one, it's one giant propaganda piece to go and join Navarr, which you should, by the way.
Yeah.
100%, you should totally join Navarr. It's the best nation by far. I hope that in the brief time we have together, that we will prove that this is actually the case, right? Because we love Navarr. Love it with our deepest hearts. We love Navarr. Okay. Let's go like we were doing this if we actually had some proper guests on.
All right, so
what are the look and feel of Navarr?
Okay, so I think really, actually, a better way to start this is actually to talk about the history of Navarr, in-game history, very briefly, because I think that feeds into a lot to why this is the way it is.
I think I totally agree, and it's one of the things that's missed out on how people understand Navarr.
Yeah.
Within the modern context of the game, is their history.
Yeah. Which basically, and you can pick me up if I'm wrong on any of this, but basically, there's this ancient civilization that existed in the world of Empire called Turuniel, and there's an event which is basically the fall of Turuniel, which is a pivotal kind of story element, if you like, in the Empire lore.
Yeah. Somebody messed with spring too much.
Yes. Yeah. And basically the Navarri people are a group that has kind of come that the refugees of that kind of crisis.
Yeah, we are the people of Turuniel.
Yeah.
That after they did something very, very naughty potentially.
Yeah.
The impression is they did something naughty, right?
Naughty or stupid or both.
Yeah, or whatever. They did something with magic, and then magic, that scene off the end of Ghostbusters when there's too much ghosts everywhere. That's how I imagine Turuniel went down, but with no Ghostbusters, just lots and lots of magic. Terrible things. Yeah. Valorn may have been spawned there.
I believe that was the spawning of Valorn.
Yeah. Something, I don't know. Yeah, we're already entering into really murky territory.
But there's a whole thing, basically, that we are, I'd say, refugees from this place, but we're not, we're not supposed to be necessarily down and out kind of, purely woodsy kind of folk. We're people who have, a proud kind of history and tradition, and there is this kind of memory, almost like a cultural memory more than a living memory of this ancient civilization that came before, and the ties and bonds that have been made on the way from our transition to where that is and where we are now.
Big stereotype that Navarr is a bunch of thugs that live in the woods that are deeply uncultured, right? That is not what Navarr are at all. We're a deeply there's a code to everything that we kind of do, really, and it's not formal. Yeah, it's more like an understanding within the culture, right? Yeah. We enjoy music and story a great deal, and that is built into huge parts of our story, right? If you're ever in a Navarr camp and you're offered a drink and they're like, "Oh no, I've got no money," you may well be offered the opportunity to buy yourself a drink through a song or a story.
Yes.
Usually that's meant in jest more than anything else. If you usually can't afford, someone will give you a beverage. But it's a nice way to get people to engage in the game and kind of get a bit of performance there going, right?
Yeah.
And then kit going into that, because that was your original question.
Yeah.
Is that it is your kind of traditional kind of practical sort of woodsy wear.
Yeah.
But the ways that you can take some of the iconography with the forms and the things like that, because there's a big thing of tattoos in Navarr as well. And sort of you'll have tattoos that signal basically oaths that you've made.
I mean, that's kind of... Let's talk about the general kit for a minute, just if you're a new player and you're showing up. One thing that's nice about Navarr is loads of the kit is your very basic medieval fantasy stuff. Most of it will fit fairly good. In fact, like, most of my stuff is not dressy at all in any way, shape or form. It's very peasantry, but it works very well.
And you can just kind of chuck a scarf or something on top of, like, you know, just like an extra layer. Have some pouches, basically. If you've got pouches and sort of some kind of greeny kind of colours and a scarf, and get yourself, obviously, a cloak and a hood is always big and clever.
For me, there are two ways to approach the Navarr costume, okay? And they are both built within the lore and the kind of mechanics of the game, which is kind of like... Not mechanics, sorry. We are practical people.
Yeah.
So therefore, pouches, pockets, anything like this. You don't want to be the guy that's faffing around with, like, not having a really big bag with too much in it, right? Like, you're going to have pockets for everything. You're going to be ready to go at any given moment. And also, you collect things as you go.
Yeah.
So there's a tradition in Navarr. We're already rambling on, and it's like we're making it sound way more complicated than it is.
Look, every nation. The truth is, of course, every nation is like this.
Yeah,
it's just we're able to talk about this in a first-hand way.
We have two types of like group or banner, if you'd like, right? Like, you know, we have stridings.
Yeah.
Stridings are what they do on the tin. They stride a lot, so they are moving around all the time.
Walking the trods. So the trods, just for quick reference, are like a magical road that is, if you think of it that way, and they kind of they wend their way across the empire and allow for swifter travel, basically. And you keep them active by walking them actively.
So there's a big, like, part of our culture that is literally walking the trods.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, we walk the trods. We recently, some High Guard players made a decision to try and help us walk the trods. Made Navarr very, very happy and very thankful to the High Guard. Like, there's cultural points that mean a lot to us.
There's costs to doing it as well.
Yes,
that was cool.
They're big up to High Guard, basically. You know, but as I was actually saying this at a player event recently. Like, High Guard didn't do it because they're trying to be nice.
Yeah.
High Guard did it because it's the right thing to do. And how a High Guard thing is that to do? In fact, I met a High Guard group that are leaving High Guard because it's the right thing to do and they can do more good elsewhere.
Yeah.
Like, that's how some High Guard players are, that they leave the nation, for God's sake. We digress. There are stridings. They stride about the place and travel around a lot. And there are steadings.
Yes.
And steadings are usually places where might be on a trod, where people can stop and get a beverage, or for
way
example,
stations, kind of like logging cabins, all that kind of jazz, right?
Like way stations, even up to the cities we have, they also will contain steadings.
Yeah.
So
going back to my original point about now we're rapidly barreling through a whole bunch of Navarr lore here, but we also, not only are we practical, because we travel around a lot, so try and think about that you should always be ready for anything.
Some more practical than others.
Some more practical than others, Ian. But we are also, we collect things where we go. So for my character, Gellert, I am a sailor, and therefore I have a shell necklace. Okay? My shell necklace is a huge signifier of who my character is. That's who my character... If I took that off and changed a couple of bits, people might assume I'm a different character, right? So that's a really nice way of building up some kit through very little minor details from maybe things that you've collected, and maybe think about where you've been and how you might add those things to your costume, right?
And I think, as with all kit, actually, in a way, unless you've got a really clear vision maybe of what you're after, there's nothing wrong with kind of going to an event, getting a feel for who you are living in this world, and how you then want to react with it. So, and that's how like my kit's kind of evolved the way it has, right? The angle I want to take is based off
fancier and fancier and fancier.
But like that wouldn't have happened. That's not what I would originally. If I just literally just like bombed everything on achieving a look, that's not the look I would have ended up with at the beginning.
I think we're all big fans of organic characters at LARP. Like, I think having a monolith of a character is a bad idea. I think you should be open to change, right?
Yeah.
And one of those things is, a wonderful signifier of that is kit and changing your kit, right? In fact, check out the character from Kit episode that we released.
That was really nice.
That was actually really good. There are a couple of things that are like important kind of statements that make Navarr who we are, okay? Like, not only do we camp in the woods, which is cool, by the way, and if you're curious, like, we are the envy of many other nations. The only other nation that gets to camp in the woods like we do are the Imperial Orcs.
Wintermark creeping into the woods.
Are they creeping into those woods?
I know.
That's to keep those Wintermark out, man. Like,
there are also Navarr who don't camp in the woods.
There are Navarr who don't camp in the woods, and that's important.
The one issue with the non-wooded Navarr camp is it's okay slope-wise for a bit, and then it just suddenly drops. So where the boar's head is the very last point before it gets too steep to camp on.
Yeah.
But I think they kind of, there's quite a few actual places there actually on the outside of the main forested Navarr area.
There's some. I think it's mainly because of the larger camps, right? Like because unfortunately, when you're camping in the woods, there are trees in the way, which might not mean that you get to have the larger things.
Yeah, some of the tents there.
I think it really adds to the camp, to be fair, to have those buildings outside. Buildings, tents. That's how I view it.
But it's also
the Eternals are out there, aren't they?
Yeah,
right outside the front of the gate.
Yeah. But the thing is, as well, you could easily just like lose Navarri in the fact that they're in that wooded area, and if you didn't have the visual signifier, of course, of all the stuff outside the wooded area, you wouldn't necessarily even know there was the wooded area.
Yeah,
well, you'd hear it.
Well, you'd hear it. Yes, you would definitely hear it. That's true.
Oh, before we move on too far, colour palette wise, there's a lot of greens and browns, obviously.
There's also
autumnal colours, which is really important. So don't feel too restricted on this stuff. And believe me, like, it's quite interesting me even saying this now. When we first started the hobby, I was very dubious about kit and trying to be identified within a part of nation and being restricted in that. Now I see it as like almost freeing that you get to you can really express yourself as part of that brief and still be very much within the nation.
All three of our characters. And if you look at the Navarri brief, it's easy to be deceived that it would all be very sort of standardised.
Yes.
There's a lot of subtlety that can come through it. But looking at our three characters, we all have a very different look.
Very much so.
You know.
And in fact,
fancy sailor hobo.
Yeah. But I think that's been one of the nice things about doing some of these nation episodes, where we're really... Like, I think this is one thing that I think a lot of players will face when they first see their brief, will feel quite restricted by them. But believe me, once you take to the field and you can see how far people can push and express themselves, oof, my goodness. Let me put it this way. My soft kick game is nowhere near finished. There is a lot of work that needs doing.
Dude, mine's not finished. That's I've been really working on it.
Ian, the fanciest Navarr.
Yeah, what
the fanciest Navarr ever.
But your
potentially
your point about like kit being a way of expressing character. That's literally what I've done, right? I've like that story I wanted to kind of tell. We can expressed through that character.
We could talk about how practical some of your elements of clothing
is. Dude, I got a
we can talk about it. I'm not saying there's a right answer or a wrong answer here. I'm just saying there's a conversation. I'm just asking questions.
I'm a
curious mind.
That's all
it is. What I mean? That's all I am. Right, couple of statements that are kind of like really important about the kind of mindset about being a Navarr. Survival is change. Okay? Yeah. So this goes into this idea of being very practical. We think long-term about problems. So there's some controversy about a certain spell called Rivers Run Red, which is basically where you gorilla fuck a region and it turns awful and people die, crops fail. Yeah. It's awful. Navarr have been seen to think this is quite a good idea sometimes because it means a scorched earth technique. Yeah. So the very real damage of this being caused might be beneficial long term. This is an example and a controversial one, so please don't hate me in the comments.
Well, I think I remember having a conversation with I can't remember what nation he was from, but is that the
Fallen Queen event?
the Fallen Queen event. We were just chatting around our campfire about, obviously, Rivers Run Red. And he was from the region that had recently had it cast upon.
I felt bad.
But it's just like, you know what, fuck this, I'm going into it. So no, there's a reason.
But the thing was, it was his first event. His first event was a player event, and he happened to choose a Navarr camp to talk about why he disliked Rivers Run Red.
I think that was an active choice, though.
No. Yeah. I ran after him. He left our camp sometime after. He didn't immediately leave after the conversation. He didn't scare him off. I chased after him and said to him, "Hey man, sorry if we went really hard there." And he was so happy because of let me put it this way: you're looking for a reaction a lot of your time. And let me put it this way: he picked one of the best camps in the entire field to come and have that conversation with, because not all of us were like.
Well, we've all got different opinions on it as well.
We would sacrifice our own mothers if it meant that we were one step closer to defeating the Valorn, for example, or killing the Druze. Hardcore. We talked about our friends who had died and how it was sad they were no longer with us. Yeah. But I stand completely confident that they are walking the trods. Walking the labyrinth incredibly fast because they died in...
They're burning bright.
They're burning bright in the service of... We shouldn't put in too much our semi-heresy into the episode as a way.
There is no heresy.
Yeah, no, we're not heretics, but what Ian just described then is burning bright is a very much our Ashbourne striding thing.
Yeah, it is. Sorry.
We should caveat that
when we all get together and it comes out.
Yeah.
And one of the other really important things about our nation is the term, and say it with me, you can't betray your enemy. Okay, we as Navarr live by this, and it's one of the most badass justifications for being the most violent. There is
important also to say that Navarr aren't just stabby. No. People. There is a perception of it that.
No, but that's not our enemy, right? This is the thing.
It's why the Jotun hate us.
Yeah.
Because we're actually fighting a war and not playing a game.
Okay. We shouldn't colour things too much. With our opinions.
I know.
I got into,
but it's not an opinion. That's the crazy thing.
Okay. I got into a huge I went to a Brass Coast event recently, and it was all politics. And me and a really awesome Wintermark player went ding dong round for round Fraser Alley about honour battles, and it was excellent. It was really good. You know when you're fucking with someone who's we're gonna you know what I mean? You both put the gloves on, you both head out to the middle of the ring, and you're okay, let's do it. And there were moments, which is very rare in modern political discourse, where the other person's nice. Do you know what I mean? You come up with a point that's that is... that's spicy and nice.
I think that's the thing is, and this actually goes for just general RPing in Empire or any kind of LARP, and the fact that there's these kind of archetypes of ideas and things that you can express, right?
Yep.
And I want to tell this kind of story, this is the kind of agenda that I want to explore, and you can set that up. It's almost built as its own straw man, because it's good there generally because you can angle it to be undermined in certain ways.
Okay,
you can explore.
Here's an example, right? When we're talking about it, and they're saying what would you have us do instead? And my answer as a Navarr was, I think we should make war on our enemies so badly that they never want to fight us ever again.
Yeah.
Drop that into a conversation and then then listen to the fire crack on the fire. Do you know what I mean? Me as Dave, nowhere near that badass, right? or willing to go through what that really means. But me as a Navarr is 100% serious about, I will pile my friends' bodies high, right? If it means that I can defeat the Valorn scum and free the Empire from their yoke, right? Yeah. And everyone's nodding, by the way. This is deeply within us, is the idea of sacrifice in the most brutal and honest way of doing violence there is. You know, like it's glorious.
Yeah,
dude. there's. I think the cool thing, and there's obviously different nations have their own version of this, but another key thing is the Valorn as a character building device, as an aspect of the plot and the story and the way the game's designed and how that feeds in directly to our nation. Like, imagine if there was no nemesis, like no kind of natural nemesis to the Valorn. They were just a thing. They were just plant monsters that were sort of strolling around the Empire in different regions. It wouldn't be the same, right? It wouldn't have the same thing. The fact that they are like deeply tied to the Navarr nation and what they represent as a threat is explored in brief.
As a game design, they're a gift.
Yeah.
Right? Like, they're the greatest spiritual threat to the Empire.
Yeah.
At this Brass Coast event, I was showing people these beautiful maps that my friend Orion makes. Which I am selling, by the way, which is fantastic.
Do come by.
I've got a golden ticket.
Oh, God, you do.
You're going to be earning 20%.
I've got a golden twinkle in my eye. 20%, baby.
20%?
What I loved, though, when at that player event
Sitting on
when
a beach.
the original proprietor of these maps sadly passed in battle.
Yes, he did.
And with his...
his cousin Gregor
came to take over, and you tried to convince him that it was a 30%.
No,
that was all done. That was all done in tongue in cheek. That was great.
I know.
God, we're digressing.
Sorry,
but the one thing I showed them on the map was how close. Like when you see the Empire as it is, and you see where Anvil is hosted, and how close the Valorn Husk, like the Valorn Heart is. A Valorn Heart is basically like the mega bad. There's like 4 or 5 of them spread around the known world that we know of, and that's where like darkest evil is. Where we must. Ian's clenching his fist.
There are moments.
Now.
There are moments that are coming up, which means that we have the opportunity to destroy one.
Gotta do it,
and it's just like the story. The story has to be told.
It's the best story in town,
it's
and
so
we're gonna have to come up with a coalition of like the willing, right? Yeah, the hero of Killian's going to be there. He's going to kill it himself. But
from several hundred miles away,
we're going to need like other nations to come and help us, and like there's this crazy political time at the moment where
the beacons are lit.
The beacons are lit. We must do it.
Navarr calls for aid.
Who will answer? Who will answer?
You know, there's a bunch.
But this is so partisan.
This is very, but it's impossible. I think that's one of the reasons we actually did go into doing this episode of a little bit of hesitancy, is because it's impossible to separate what Navarr means to what it means with us in relation to it.
It's tough doing the podcast in general, right? Because we, and this is where like Bleed comes into it, right? Like, I Dave, want to see the Valorn destroyed so badly. It would mean the world to me if our actions on the field led to like culpable destruction of a Valorn heart. We would eat
Valorn whore. I'm going to be using that one.
I'm not. But like the destruction of a Valorn heart and like actually being part of that would be incredible as players, right? Like all of us want that so badly. In fact, our entire our striding, which has now become part of a wider group, which we call a banner, which is a collection of steadings and stridings come together to create one larger group. All of our meetings, whenever we talk about what are we doing, why are we forming this group, and the reason is we want the destruction of the Valorn as the top center. That's why we're here. This is what we do. We're getting to the point where we're like, was it Crassus that said like at the end of every single speech he made, death to Carthage or whatever, or we must not forget that we must destroy Carthage or whatever the hell it was, right? That's how I am nowadays with the Valorn. Like, this is great that we're having this conversation right now, but let's not forget that the greatest threat to the Empire, the greatest spiritual threat to the Empire, is 30 miles down the road right now and needs destroying. You know, fuck yes.
They are great. Like, and by the way, the people who play them on the field and having the opportunity to play them when you get the chance, it's a lot of fun.
If we
it's a lot of fun.
Valorn are tree creatures, effectively.
Yeah, like plant zombies.
Husks.
Yeah, you got Valorn Husk, which is the basically a body that's been taken over by Valorn miasma.
Yeah,
and eventually becomes a husk, which may or may not still contain the soul of the person who's dead.
Valor still does. Well, that's what we understand it to be, right?
We now understand it to be that it is. I didn't want to spoil it if anyone wanted to find out in game, but fine, fuck you.
No, I think it's common knowledge.
I think it is now. It's on the
That's common knowledge.
So, the soul is trapped within.
Okay. We could definitely talk about why we should kill the Valorn, which we should do, and there should be an entire special which is 10 hours long of just us talking to different members of Navarr and Highguard and other nations about why it should be destroyed.
Well, it's a major part of the binding of thorns, especially if you are a thorn of your archetype in Navarr.
What a wonderful segue, Bungle.
Yeah. It's one of the whole parts of when you become a thorn, you swear an oath to fight the Valorn.
Yeah. So what Bung's talking about here is the binding of thorns. This is a very specific in-game thing. It has to do with Navarr have tattoos on their bodies. This doesn't mean on your face. It's just very common to have it on your face.
Yes.
So if you're uncomfortable about having, we use mascara. What's the other stuff that we use?
We've used eyeliner.
Yeah.
Eyeliner pen, especially the ones designed for like cat eyes and stuff.
It's not mascara I use, is it?
It's eyeliner pen.
Yeah, it's eyeliner, right?
So eyeliner pens, and also another thing we've used is alcohol activated ink,
which is the best.
Which is great, stays on for a very long time, especially if you're good, Dave. His skin holds
immaculate.
Whatever I do is tattoo on the Friday morning.
I am a sweaty boy.
Boom. Sunday, he's having to clean that original one off. I'm having to redraw one on Sunday morning, depending on what's going on.
Yeah.
Obviously, don't use henna on your face. Any of that stuff. Only use products that you won't mess your face up. Basically,
a good way to go is to have a little test on your the top of your hand. Just put a little dab of it on, leave it for a few hours. Check if you've got any reaction or anything.
I recently had to put my own tattoos on. Because I went to events by myself.
We should say Bungle is phenomenal at doing tattoos.
And
normally
Bungle
does them all for us.
So good at doing them.
Yeah.
And I am so bad at doing them myself. Like, absolutely.
I've got a little bit better at it, and mine are quite I'm kind of trying to evolve them a little bit anyway, so I'm every time I do them, I need to explore them.
I've been experimenting with Inkbox, which is a temporary tattoo thing, which lasts about 7 to 10 days. So I tend to do like random patterns of vines on
your hand, right?
And thorns on my hand, across my hands, down my arm.
Yeah.
Obviously only on my left hand because I can't draw for shit with my left hand.
Yes.
So to do that.
It is a lot of pressure when you're first doing your tattoos and you're like, what tattoo am I going to have? Nobody is going to know if your tattoos are different. Yeah. Okay?
Yeah.
Like, this seems like it's not like an actual tattoo. When I go and I'm talking to my boys about what tattoo I'm going to have put on my face and I want it like this, I have to go through and explain it to them.
Yeah.
People don't really see them that much. They see you and your face, but they very rarely notice the tattoo. So don't feel too much pressure.
Yeah.
If you have one, you're not happy with it, you can change it, be expressive, especially when you're first starting out, right?
I've been slowly trying to evolve mine, right?
Yeah, and there's also the other thing, which also we're in a magical world. Wounds can be healed, things like that. Tattoos can be removed. So basically, if you did want to change up your facial tattoos without killing off a character, there's the whole thing which can be, well, I completed that oath that signified, so I'll got rid of that one. I've now taken a new oath to do blah. Mm-hmm. Gives you a bit more game and gives you the ability to change.
There's loads of ways you can explore it. But to be clear, I don't think anyone's really going to challenge you.
Exactly. You shouldn't change them like the rainbow, but also you shouldn't feel pressure as a new player.
No, it doesn't. And let's say, I mean, I've had the same style tattoo since the start. Yeah. I add more and more things onto my face each time I go, and more onto my hands, signifying what's been going on between events, basically in my life. But it doesn't matter. Things don't have to be exactly the same each time you do it. I mean, throughout the weekend, mine's going to change slightly because I can't put the same tick in exactly the same place. It's like,
Nope.
No one ever notices that sort of detail anymore.
Yeah.
We went to an event in Wales, which was a smaller event with some friends of ours. We might be releasing an episode about it.
We'll see.
But there was a great moment within that where a new Navarr player, a young Navarr player, made himself a name, which isn't really a Navarr thing, but that can happen just because people hang out with each other and they give each other names and it's kind of fun. Because of his deeds, he was led to dedicate to an action, and we all got to hang out and enjoy a priest administer a tattoo, which sounds really cringe. Heat up the blade, put it to the face, some screaming or not screaming.
Well, this is actually a branding, what you actually talk about.
It's a branding, right?
So this is something else that you can choose also to a sort of almost like a deeper kind of pledge, if you like, to whatever it is that you're swearing. To have a brand.
I always thought it was like adding to it, right? Like there's the same weight as the tattoo, but you're effectively making a new oath. Effectively, am I missing that?
I think oaths tend to be things that like you will do, and you can't break an oath, but when an oath is completed, bam. Whereas a brand seems to be more something that this is something you're taking on until a bit more of a.
So, for example, as a brand, my kind of pledge to essentially heal and protect my comrades, right? That is
Miss Shane Batty fan, though, right?
Hey.
I was going to say Navarches.
Yeah.
Hey. But that,
unfortunately, Ian's character wasn't there to save my old character.
I believe it was discussed on the podcast that he did see you.
He did.
I could
see it.
I could see you.
He could see where I was.
Yeah.
But
I saw you go down.
He didn't see me dying.
No.
He just saw where I was about to die. Which is an interesting. It's an interesting way to frame.
You didn't get down
like
by an
that.
arrow, did you?
No, I got cleaved in the leg. No, it wasn't an arrow. It wasn't an arrow.
Look, it was. You are unsavable.
Yeah,
Shall we move on?
Sorry.
Shall we move on?
Yeah.
Some oaths are worth more than others. I think we can say that's all.
That's my branding.
Yeah, I mean...
hey, I try.
No, if you're comfortable with... I'm not trying to call you out on your RP here, bro. But, you know, like, if you're comfortable with that, man, it's not for me to put you down on how you play the game, you know?
I get the feeling a lot of this
even if it means...
Look, if you wanna
even if it means that my character dies.
If you want to think about it, I'm a member of the Navarr, so I've got to protect myself. Right?
Wow.
I'm fucking...
Let's move on.
Someone's got to hold on to all that coin, isn't they?
Let's talk about the Great Dance briefly.
Yeah. So it's like a philosophy, basically, of this idea of how you go through your life, and the way, in a sense, that you kind of think about life and its relationship to the afterlife and what comes, you know, when we've essentially transitioned through the labyrinth and the cycle of that.
Yeah, it's for me, it's like finding your place, right?
Yeah.
Is a good way to put it. Like, practically,
your place in the dance is what you're searching to do,
right? And it's like everyone has a place. It's almost like that. I love this as a philosophy, which is like all of us have a place and a thing that we're doing that will give us it is our place, right? Yeah. Like we're trying to find that for our oddly shaped socket, we're trying to find our perfect hole.
Phrasing, boom.
Well, there we go.
No, but
we're all trying to find our perfect hole to fit into,
yeah.
and we are, and that is like that can be a job, that can be a place, that can be a thing. Like, what do you need to do to find your place in the Great Dance? Where
and
you
the
can
interesting
be the best,
because it's a dance, you can move
and change,
right? And that's the thing, and that placement can change as you change,
yeah,
and it can grow into something else. This idea of like that you explore different facets of your character through this lifetime.
Yeah,
it's a nice kind of philosophy.
It's beautiful because it means that like there's loads of stuff that we do in our normal lives that we don't get to quite enjoy.
Yeah.
In this role play system, we get to really express that. So this is the finding your place in the Great Dance is a really good way to get into Navarr if you're in a different nation. Obviously, you can change. Your character can change nations.
Yeah.
So that's a lovely way to put it. You might go to Navarr and say, I am drawn to Navarr for some reason. These people have had an effect on me. And the egregore may say, well, maybe your place in the great dance is here, and maybe you should you should come and find it. Also, leaving Navarr.
Yeah,
there have been players foolishly leave Navarr, but when they do that, it's about trying to find their place. And it's not, there's no judgment there. You don't give up your tattoos or your oaths when you leave Navarr, but you may serve those oaths and those brands better elsewhere, which is a wonderful game mechanic, you know?
Yeah, I think there's also another mechanic that can come into play, especially if you're in Navarr wanting to leave and not carry oaths with you, is the unburdening, which I think is a spring thing.
Yeah, so we have. That's a really cool kind of like thing for that. Actually, just an event that happens at Navarr where people give away kit and stuff and things, and there's like this idea of like passing off those things you no longer need.
Yeah, and if there's like there's oaths you realise I can no longer hold to this oath, where be it for any reason, you can speak to whomever you need to. Say like normally it would be a guide or.
Oh, I didn't know that was part of the
you can actually have an oath removed during the unburdening.
Don't do that though. Yeah, don't do that. Don't make silly
Stay
oaths.
in Navarr. Come on.
Don't make silly oaths.
So good.
You know, save that for like Dawn. I don't know. Like, if you want to make like just open grandiose statements like that.
And I think I've probably said it when I've been on there before. Is Navarr feels like home to me. I don't know if I'd be able to leave. Like I know, leaving nations obviously something that comes up in conversation with us a few times. Whether we go somewhere, part of me feels I don't know if I'd leave Navarr.
Yeah, I'm there as well, dude.
Yeah,
like, to be fair,
totally.
I've talked, I think we've all spoke around the campfire and talked about different things at different times, and I've spoken quite broadly about, I would play, the Brass Coast or something like that, right? But the ease of saying that and the difficulty of actually leaving Navarr is that there will be a contest of will that takes place if I ever move into that decision, because I love Navarr so much.
There's some big lines I would like to see crossed before I leave Navarr.
Yeah.
Like we have
there's things we've been working towards, right?
Bear in mind, like because of the reason why we haven't been LARPing for the last couple of years happened. Like there is loads of stuff that there's still on pause right now. Yeah. So when we're talking about like wanting to join different nations, for me it's more like it's a nice little dream I have that's 2 years away. Yeah. Unfortunately, that 2 years hasn't got any closer in the last 2 years. Yeah. Okay, like it's stayed that distance for the entire time. Yeah. So for me, I have like, and yes, when we get to that point, giving up Navarr, giving up songs and stories.
Well, and the cool thing, of course, you wouldn't have to, but
no, but that's ours.
Yeah.
Like. Other nations get to come and enjoy songs and stories, but it's ours.
Yeah, I mean, other nations you'll have people performing in like their taverns or whatever. You go to the.
No, I'm talking about. I'm just talking about the actual.
Brass you'll have to pay normally for performance.
No,
stuff like that. But no, you come to Navarr.
Songs and Stories is so freaking special. Yeah. Okay, like it's not. But what I'm saying is, as a Navarr, when we're sat around that fire circle and we're engaging in the songs and the stories, maybe you're taking part or maybe you're just joining along in the choruses. That's us. We're not foreigners in our nation when we're enjoying that, right? Like we are that. Like, and the pride I have in all of those performers going up there and representing the nation and being part of it, it swells my heart. Do you know what I mean? Like, because that's, for me, Songs and Stories is this wonderful little metaphor for what it's like to be in Navarr, right? Like, it's really inclusive. You don't have to be really, really good to take part. Your best is good enough.
Yeah.
Okay? And that is what I consider a huge factor whenever I talk about Navarr, and one thing that like people don't understand about it. Your best in Navarr is totally good enough.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, you don't have to be someone else to be awesome in Navarr. You can just be the best version of yourself, or at least try your hardest. And we'll welcome you with open arms, right? Like, it's fantastic, dude.
Yeah. Obviously, never forget the 2 rules of Songs and Stories.
Yeah.
Never interrupt Songs and Stories. Never apologise.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's very good. Yeah, this is one thing. Other nations have come in and interrupted. This is very, very rude. There is actually another rule, which is to never ask for payment. You'll never ask that. So whatever you perform, you have to do free. There was some stuff with the Brass Coast that happened. These are like little cultural things. As with most cultural mistakes, usually a quick conversation and an apology usually sorts most of them out.
I think also sometimes these things are done like you prod a bit to the game, right? Like you will do the thing to play that bit of the game, right?
Again, going back to the branding of forms, the ceremony of that is again something very important and definitely never to be interrupted, as several Dornish people found out.
Yeah, that's not.
Well, we're not going to go into that.
Bash Dawn too hard.
It's too easy.
We have loads of friends in Dawn, by the way, which is why we're bashing them. To go back to quickly, just to give an overview what Songs and Stories is. There's everyone meets at the kind of fire pit from 7 till time out. It's run by some really talented, wonderful people who all sit down and kind of like they keep things as the momentum going. So they'll select people to either tell stories or sing songs. And
no, people volunteer. They don't select.
Yeah, but they kind of choose. Like they'll ask you sometimes,
go, and then you get invited in. You don't ever just go in.
Yeah, what I mean. Yeah, so there's a master of ceremonies that kind of looks after things. I don't think there's stories after 11.
I think generally that's the
general rule,
kind of
is what I was saying
Songs
about
only
that.
after 11 or
Yeah, so sometimes there's like a pacing thing. They're very, very good at what they do, basically.
Yeah.
If you're nervous, I highly recommend you just going and taking one of them to one side and saying, "Hi, I'm nervous. I have a song or story. How do I go about doing this?" That's a very valid way to do it.
Yeah.
During our time there, from the start when we were playing, we just showed up and started enjoying Songs and Stories. When it came time for us to perform at Songs and Stories, fortunately I knew a couple of people, but basically the process goes like this. You try and make eye contact, you hold your hand up, they acknowledge that you're there, and then they might whisper to you, "Song or story?" And you'll go, "Story," across the fire pit while they're doing another song, and then they'll know, right? And then they'll be like, "Okay, up next is this person. You try not to shit your pants, stand up, try not to wobble in case you've had a couple of beverages, head into the middle of the square and do whatever it is you got to do," okay?
Yeah.
For me, I did a limerick.
Yeah.
That was the full extent of how brave I was. I wanted to be in there for less than 10 seconds and be out, right? And it went well. And when you watch people who aren't hugely confident in singing or telling stories go out there and be nervous, no one's going to beat you up for that, right? Like, no one's going to give you shit for that. If they do, let me know and we'll deal with them. But it's about going out there and giving it your best crack, basically. And I think that's a wonderful thing, and I can't wait to get back to
everyone's so just welcoming and generous with their kind of love and affection for everybody who goes up. It's such a welcoming environment.
It's scary.
Of course, it's the type of thing, like singing a song is the type of thing that I thought would never be possible with my personality type, right? Like, genuinely, that's not the kind of thing that Ian would ever do or have the confidence to do, right? It's challenged, that aspect.
You did one, which we've been fortunately blessed with by some great people putting the effort in, but doing virtual Songs and Stories for the last couple of years, which has been amazing to keep the hype together. Basically, I've been holding them on when events would have been. Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Dare I say it? Things are looking pretty good for E1 next year.
Hopefully.
I'm excited.
Touchwood.
That is definite touchwood moment.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's gonna be so exciting to get back,
mate.
Yeah,
mate.
The hype is real.
I see this there's this giant dam, right, and it's creaking. And ever so often there's a big enough crack that some random RP comes spraying out of it, okay? And then you're like, Jesus, how much RP is back there? And you're like, tons.
Yeah.
Hundreds of thousands of tons of RP, kit makers, people reading the wiki hardcore, mining that shit, looking for story to inflict on the world.
You'll be on the other side of the dam, holding a barrel.
No,
hoping that the water can just rush into that barrel, but it's going to be too much RP for it.
Matt P will walk out there with a giant hammer, and there'll just be one beam, and he just needs to hit the one beam, and then it's just.
Oh!
villages gone, the whole forest disappear under just massive RP and beautiful kit, you know, like
so
and you
much
play a
hype.
keen, and it's going to be amazing.
Yeah.
One thing I will say, the player events I've been to, the new player hype and what they're bringing,
the energy of new
is
players, right?
so good. Like they know the wiki better than I do. They bring
Yeah.
in some crazy cool characters.
Yeah.
They're expressing themselves.
If you want to know more about Navarr, actually, there's plenty of new players who can tell you a lot more about it than I can. So crazy it is.
Yes, very much so.
Yeah.
Have we missed anything out? I'm sure we have.
Most likely, but
Yeah, I mean,
Oh, we should quickly talk about how we fight. That's a good thing. We talked about that in the other episodes.
yeah. So there's. Yeah, do you want to?
well, you say how you fight, and then I'll say how the rest of Navarr fights.
No, I'll tell you how Ian fights. Ian waits bravely behind the rest of the people that are doing the
Jeez.
fighting, holding a bow.
Jeez, guys.
And he lobs shots overwards, and as soon as anything looks at all scary, he runs away.
Hey.
Navarr typically should be a skirmish group. So basically, small groups coming in and hitting hard, retreating out as another pack hits in.
Yeah.
So you're doing a constant rolling attack,
Yeah.
and you're always refreshing.
Yeah. It's useful when it's got archer support. It's all right. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, but unfortunately, because obviously I'm a weirdo. I play Ambi for some reason.
Oh,
Ambi's
look, straight up.
Ambi-
Ambi's the most fun way to play.
Ambi is ambidextrous, for those that basically means
Look,
fighting with two hands.
So yeah, I've got my big shield breaker hammer in one hand, sword in the other. Basically designed as a Jotun tool.
Yeah. Full credit to you, dude. I will only Ambi playing a monster, right?
I like monstering as Ambi.
Yeah,
for sure.
monstering as Ambi is like a real good time.
Yeah.
So risking your character on Ambi, I'm
paying money
so,
as a character for Ambi
We can
is like,
understand why your character hasn't died because he's behind the lines with his bow. I'm at the front lines without a shield
Yeah.
with these things, and yet I haven't died yet.
Yeah. Hey.
But yeah, so that's me. But majority is sword and board or spear and board.
Spear is like a big thing in Navarr.
And obviously, what happens in a big battle is they go, "Oh, you guys have got pole arms and shields. What we need is a defensive shield wall. We don't fight in shield walls. That's not our way."
No, I disagree. I actually think we've evolved beyond that. I think
The way I want to fight.
yes, the way you want to fight.
The
Yeah,
way
I
we
agree.
should be fighting.
So one of the things that they talk about heavily on the brief is having what do they call it when it's non-identical? There's a fancy name.
asymmetric.
Asymmetric shields.
Yeah.
I happen to own one. It's one of my
Beautiful
favourite
shield.
bit of kit I've ever ordered. Robert did a fantastic job on it. I love it.
Yeah.
And spears. So especially with the new rules that have come out about the
Armor change.
armor changes, means that you can be a lot lighter weight, but effectively have a lot more rules, right?
And this comes in after I get heavy fucking steel.
Yeah, well, I'm crying in mage armor, dude. All there are now are less targets for archers to aim at, and mages are that much more juicy. You know, we're a delicious thing to aim at.
Honestly, I think the rule changes are fantastic.
I agree.
And I'm saying this as someone who has made their own heavy armor and spent all the fucking ball ache that makes to actually do that.
Yeah.
And is an archer.
But I think
it's double whammied by it. I still think it's a great idea.
Yeah, I
it
agree.
increases inclusivity, ease of access.
Yeah.
It gives people the opportunity to have really interesting and varied kit.
I think
it's
there's
a
some
phenomenal
amazing that polyboard stuff.
Stuff Callum got.
Yeah, I think it's so creative and so fun, and it's good. But my point is that if you're looking at a Navarr build, you do not have to be the scouty boy all the time, right? You can be Gretson chain on, can be aluminium, dirty it up a bit, put that on underneath it. You're wearing heavy armor, shield, and a spear. Get involved, you will wreck, right? But you can also have the option to be an archer. You can also be a scouty person. You can do all of this stuff as part of the Navarr brief. So I would say there are loads of options for us as Navarr now, as there are many things. Again, it seemed limiting, but actually when you actually start looking into it, I think we're going to start to see a block of heavy infantry in Navarre more and more.
I think so, but I think we're still going to have elements of shock trooping to go with that.
Oh,
that's what I mean.
Last event, we
no,
were being
100%.
used to shock.
What I'm saying is, like,
backwards and forwards across the fucking field.
We're going to be able to have
tired.
a block of heavy, and then we're going to have some really scary skirmishes, and then we're going to continue our fantastic run of absolutely dicking on fools who try and mess with Navarre, basically.
Yep.
Our martial prowess is second to none. This comes down to, like, a whole bunch of reasons. It goes down to our, like, senior leadership. It goes down to our, like, sergeants on the ground, to our magnificent personalities who draw us in and let us feel brave and fight together side by side, like honor-bound goddamn Navarre. And we're also the absolute fighting spirit of the individual soldiers on the front line. Like, you will see them spit fire and fire burn in their eyes when you take us on. Like, whoever, you'll bark up the wrong tree if you want to fuck with Navarre. We will end you.
Oh man, but it's great. Like the whole. There's such a kind of a ballsiness in it as well to it as well. Like, you know,
Navarre are drinking, fun-seeking killers. You know what I mean? Oh, this is one thing I want to get into. Our reputation for being
literally what you just said. Literally what you just said. No. Check yourself.
We're not murderers.
No.
We're not murderers.
Yeah.
There's a difference. And when I actually was lucky enough to look at the murder rates and the actual breakdown of the militia like crimes.
Yeah.
Navarre are not bad at all. In fact, like, murders are like we
that
murder,
the militia know.
We murder less people than other nations do, or at least they get caught less.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is hard to say about police numbers. Police numbers are a little bit squishy,
You know.
but like, it's very easy to blame Navarre. You basically, if you want to kill someone, you go to the Navarre woods, jump out of the thing, and then they find a body and are like, oh, a Navarre did it, right? Like, that is the very common thing to happen. As far as we live on Murder Alley.
Yeah.
It's nice.
It's great. It's prime real estate.
People are lovely.
Never seen a single murder.
Not once. Never seen any. I didn't see nothing, Your Honour. I have walked home and been like, oh shit, who are these guys? And then realised it's you, and been like, oh, all right, lads, you all right?
Yeah. Oh man.
Right. Yeah. We have some really good bars in Navarre. There's the Navarr, which is good.
Yeah.
There's
the actual name is the Twisted Root, isn't it?
Is it the Twisted Root?
I think so.
No, there's two.
There's the one that's right next to Songs and Stories.
Yeah, that's the Navarr.
It's the Twisted Root. Is the actual
no,
name
there's
of it.
two. They're either side, right?
Navarre. No.
Oh, it might be. I don't know.
Either way,
Yeah.
bars are very temporary. Honestly, going to it. The Boar's Head is now run by some other people, which aren't the people that were running it previously. It's still a very good bar. I just wanted to say that. You know what I mean? Like, I've been singing that bar's praises far too much, basically, and they're making far too much money off the sales.
There's a Drunken Goose, which is...
That's the other one I was
Lights.
thinking of. Yeah, they're very good.
Yeah.
Some fine mead makers in Navarre as well.
Oh, yes.
Good lord.
And good cider makers.
Oh yeah.
2 feet cider.
2 feet.
2 feet's legit. Shall we wrap it up? Is there anything else that we need to talk about?
I wasn't like, did you guys want to go through like your favourite memory if you had to list something? Like, if I asked you what was your favourite memory in Navarre, is there anything that jumps out at you guys? Like, what would you take away? Like, what's the thing that pops out?
Do you know what? The first thing that popped into my head,
that's
this
what
might
I'm
not be my favourite thing.
It's
the one that pops into my head was way early on when we first started going to Empire. Was I was by myself at Songs and Stories. There is a song where towards the end of the night, those who want to can stand up in the middle of the circle, hold their weapons above the circle pit, and do a little dance and a little song, and you move around and you look up at the top of your weapon, clinking against all the other ones, and you make like this vow towards like Navarre. And Ian wasn't there, and Ian showed up and saw me doing that. But like at the time, I was totally immersed in what I was doing, and it was totally for me. And I was totally unself-conscious of being around strangers in this moment. I was there. I was Navarre. I was in that moment completely, and that is a really special moment for me.
And here's the interesting thing: my favourite moment is that moment.
Right.
Like viewing my best friend, like have that moment. like, and know that was what was happening, and it was happening for me. It was just such a special moment. Yeah. Like, it's literally like, it's top tier life moment. Yeah. Not just LARP moment, life moment. Like, super quality.
Emotional, special, right?
Yeah. And, like, just, there's been so many moments.
Yeah, bear in mind, I could have gone with Sam telling me my thing. That's could have been the funeral.
Is that being there when Sam was telling the story of Ifan.
Yeah.
That was awesome.
Yeah. It's something, like, I love that moment, by the way. It's one of the only moments. It's the only moment I've cried at Empire was when Sam told me that story.
Yeah.
But I think specifically Navarr was that moment around when we were doing that thing. Because
there was a great symbolisation and realisation of the Navarri sort of spirit, if you like.
And surrendering to LARP.
Yeah.
A lot of the times when you're first attending, you can be very self-conscious and aware of yourself. I think that was one of the very first moments where I'm consciously aware of me surrendering and letting go of all of the outside world and just being free to enjoy that moment of RP.
Yeah.
And letting my imagination fire.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of the things when you're hearing songs around songs and stories is they might be about real events and real people.
Yeah.
And this edutainment that I think is so good is part of that. Is hearing songs and being part of that world. And when one day your actions may well be told as a story or sung as a song around that fire pit.
Yeah.
That's badass.
Yeah.
I think it's like we've had so many little experiences and big experiences just through our striding and their place and all the little interpersonal stories as well. I've really enjoyed.
I also love the cultural shorthand. We've got into it here a little bit, but I think it's crazy how cultural shorthand becomes really common. Like, when I'm talking to different people within our group, there's an understanding of how things work in Navarr, right? Yeah. Like, we don't talk about it, we do it, right? Yeah. Like, when we're talking about facing our enemies, no one's like, well, we definitely should have spared them and let them retreat and regroup, right? No. We're like, why didn't we butcher them down to the last orc, right? Like, while we had the opportunity. They will come back.
Yeah.
Like, no one... Yeah, everyone's laughing. Like, if you can see what I'm looking at right now, like, everyone's in complete agreement that we are terrible war criminals. But,
terrible things.
There's no such thing as Geneva in Empire.
No. That's one of the things I love, that whenever we go to do our session of monstering, you go through and the skirmish crew go, oh, so what nation are you from? So they can sort you to where you are. Oh, Navarr. Oh, Imperial Druge. This way.
Yeah.
It's how we are known.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think it's like, we're not cruel.
Yeah.
Right? And I think this is one thing that other nations don't understand, is they consider it to be like sadist or cruel or unnecessary. It's just like, no, it's the
Practical,
best way to cause the least amount of harm is to be as brutal as possible. There have been some examples in modern war history that have done that, which have turned out terribly. So, but we're not doing that. We're playing a fantasy game. So,
I think it harks back to that thing I was saying earlier, like LARP and the stories and the mechanics. And bear in mind, this is all baked into the cake, right? But all of these different things allow groups of players and individual players to explore little archetypes and little avenues. And as I say, you always build it in, as I said before, with an ability for it to be undermined, for ability to be challenged, right? You want the challenge to the point that you're making, right? So the point, you kind of angle it in a way so you can invite that, right? So you don't have to worry about like making the perfect kind of
it's also like
foundation.
Choosing your audience, right? Like that poor lad who showed up and started to talk about Rivers Run with us. Wrong camp.
Oh no, it's great.
Or the best camp, right? Or the best camp.
It was the best camp.
Yeah, because it's like you can, in no uncertain terms, hear exactly what we as Navarr think about that, right?
Yeah.
Like,
no, it's and I don't think I could repeat what I said, because mainly I was ad-libbing off the top of my head and sort of not quite bricking it, but just going, you know what, fuck it, I'm just going whole hog into this shit and just blah 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 blah.
We see, like, I mean, we could talk about this, like this thing with Sparkle, but like being a physic who's actually healed people with that kind of thing, right, and being able to play off that, and like, I invited him to speak and tell you, I wanted you all to hear what it actually means, what the actual ramifications of it were, from one of the people, and I said, you know, could you tell them all about what this means, right? And the way that like you're able to explore and work with other players and things and create moments.
Well,
it's so good.
I think it's also like when you're listening to a lot of these sort of conversations, you're hearing about like very strong political opinions, right? Where people are very passionate about what they're talking about. It comes with time. It's only since like these recent bout of
Though
like
some of the new players are like killing it.
Yeah, but it's like if you're not there yet, don't worry.
Yeah.
It takes time, right? Like, but I think all of us now, even my husband Callum, is getting onto his soapbox occasionally and talking a little bit of politics, which he's disgusted about himself with. But when he starts talking about the Vlorn threat, he starts talking and waxing lyrical on the subject. And it's wonderful to see.
Yeah.
You're most apolitical people, you dip them in Navarr for long enough, bring them out, they'll be like, they won't think they're political until someone says, oh, these silly regional conflicts against the Vlorn must end. And then you'll just be like some guy flying across a bar throwing a clothesline. Do you know what I mean? It will be like, people, you pick stuff up and eventually it becomes quite important to you that you don't talk such shit around a Navarr, you know?
Yeah.
Oh man, what?
Yeah,
well,
I don't know whether I'm proving Navarr.
No, you've done a real good job of just like really. We're not like that, but here's an anecdote.
Yeah.
No, I'm fucking with you.
I think that's kind of like the duality.
That
of
is the
Navarr.
duality of it.
Yeah.
That's the kind of point, right?
That is baked
like
in.
when we talk about so you would be willing to do anything to your enemy? Yeah. But you're not my enemy, so why would you worry, right? We're friends. It's just like...
Don't become my enemy.
Yeah, if you become my enemy, then I don't understand why on earth we would ever parlay, right?
Interestingly, having said all of that as well, though, I think that... And bear in mind, there are some very obvious conflicts, like law-wise and just through sort of actions in play, that could happen with other nations. And they are explored, for sure.
Oh, definitely.
But I actually really like the place Navarr has within the Empire and the way the other nations and the interactions we have with them.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's actually like a very kind of warm feeling, and I'm sure this is the same for all nations, of course, but it actually feels pretty good being a Navarri, walking around Empire, being able to talk with everybody.
It's a very easy sell to other nations about the Vlorn.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it's a very easy thing to be like, oh, here are our problems.
Yeah.
Let me talk to you about our problems. Yeah. I mean, like, mainly, if you get killed by a Vlorn husk or the Vlorn, then your soul gets stuck in there and doesn't go to the labyrinth if you get killed by them. That is a wonderful piece of information that will focus any good Imperial citizen's mind if they are a true follower of the way, right? Like, it's a pretty important step to say.
I think it harks back to, I think, was saying, like, the idea of having the Vlorn as a game mechanic, a game thing, and having them as a threat that's part of our storyline.
They are unrelenting as Navarr are, right? Like, they represent them, right? Just as, like, if you look at, like, the Wintermark versus Jotun, it's not surprising that honor is the thing that like kind of has them bound to each other as enemies, right? Like the Grendel and the Brass Coast, right? It's almost like that cheeky scamp Andy Raff is planning all of this for our entertainment, for our goddamn entertainment. How dare he,
son of a bitch?
He's been plotting this the whole time, so we have fun.
Yeah.
Sitting there,
monstrous,
laughing away.
Yeah, just writing his magic
hanging by his
words.
toes. How dare you give us fun, sir? How dare you?
We'll come for you one day, Andy Raff. Mark my words, we'll come for you with hugs and kisses. Right, shall we end it there?
Wrap it up there,
of our
and we get to actually do our own sign off.
Yeah, man.
And it's
really
been a long
good
time.
If you're a Navarr and you've listened to this and really dislike what we've said, you are extremely welcome to release your own thing, basically. We are idiots. If you haven't listened to this and are misled at any point, that's on you. So we speak from no position of authority.
No.
We are three morons sitting in a flat talking to a microphone.
Yes.
So good caveat enough?
Yeah.
No, that covers it, I think.
Would you like to start us off?
Strength of the Empire.
Strength of Navarr.
We might have to cut the time down there.
Yeah, shall we do it again?
Yeah. Strength of the Empire.
Strength to Navarr.
Straight to the bar.